Hello, participants. Good afternoon to all of you. I am Angela Mehta. I am the CEO at IPPO, and we welcome you all to the IP Fest Day 2. And IP Fest is basically an intellectual property festival wherein we try to celebrate the genre of intellectual property. It's a very unique initiative where we call upon various speakers, and we try to use it to deploy a multi-pronged approach for celebration and knowledge in the field of IP, and to raise the awareness about IP framework, highlight the opportunities, sensitize and encourage the youth to take a new step towards leadership. So today we have two guests with us. I would like to call upon Mr. Narottam Sahu. He is the advisor at Gujarat Council on Science and Technology, and he has been with Guj Post since 2011. May I request Mr. Sahu to please unmute yourself and be able to speak a couple of words? So we can't see you though, but I'm sure we'll be able to hear you. Good afternoon, sir. This is
Good
Anjula.
afternoon. Thank
We
you so
also
much.
have, thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us. We also have Tanya ma'am with us, and I'll take her as we finish talking. Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
So, good afternoon to everybody, and I think I am very happy to be in here on the second day of this IPPO IP festival. It's a very unique program designed by this IPPO, and for the sake of IPR, the promotion, popularization, and a discussion in the common platform with a very eminent experts and domain experts in this field, sharing their experiences and discussing the case studies also. This is a very good platform to for the younger students and the faculties or the young professionals who are starting their career in IPR in various aspects. I would like to congratulate the organizers for having this program in a regular manner so that it is to create a sustained base of interest and excitement, and in also help them in the professional development in this group. On behalf of Guj Coast, Department of Science and Technology and Government of Gujarat, we also thanks to all the eminent speakers, guest faculty, those who are invited for this program, and to enlighten our students, our stakeholders, our faculties in this regard. In this connection, I am very happy to see Tanya Madam, who is discussing and who will be guiding us also in this IP journey. And I hope that with these types of presentations, deliberations from different parts of the universe in the country, in the different context also, that help us to understanding this IP in a very universal way, and with the call of Honorable Prime Minister that we should be vocal for our local. I think you understand all the tidbits of this IP cultures, IP practice, IP procedures, so that every new items or every innovations or every new skills and experiences in our time, it has to be well registered. And we by this process, we have to create a culture among the next generations also, the younger generation, who can carry out to this mission to way ahead. So with these words, I once again thanks to the IPPO family and all our faculties and all the participants. And I wish a very successful and very meaningful deliberation in the IP knowledge and IIP discussions. Thank you. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you so very much, sir, for being with us, sparing your time for being with us and supporting this initiative of IPPO's IP Fest every year. So it's real pleasure to have you here. I would now like to introduce Ms. Tanya Fredericks. Ms. Tanya Fredericks is the counselor, the head of Research and Innovation Center, delegation of the European Union of India. Ms. Tanya is the head of Sector for Research and Innovation. She started her assignment beginning of September 2016. Before that, she was working in Brussels for the European Commission in the Directorate General on Research and Innovation, Department for International Cooperation, and was responsible for cooperation with the Western Balkan countries and Turkey. Ma'am has worked for more than 15 years on EU research and innovation policy. She was the member of the Private Office of European Commissioner Philippine Ustin for Research and Innovation from 1999 to 2004. Before that, she worked at EU delegation in Geneva, Switzerland, following the negotiations on the Trade in Services (GATS) under the World Trade Organization. She is a lawyer by training and obtained her law degree at the British University, Brussels, Belgium in 1980 and a LLM in the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, US in 1981. We welcome you, ma'am, and our platform looks forward to hearing from you. Thank you, and I request you to please take the session ahead.
Let me see. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Angela, CEO of IPO, for this warm welcome, and also to Sunil for having recommended me. And I'm sorry for the confusion in the time, but that's all over now. Thank you also so much for, I see so numerous people that are connected to your event, which is a good thing because we are over. I mean, we live in this virtual world and now everybody thinks that everybody can join any webinar. And there are really a lot going on, lots of webinars. It really shows also that the area, and many related to our area overall, the importance of science and research. And that is more or less my first message, is that research and innovation and science has never been so important as today. I mean, we need it to address the challenges that we face. And unfortunately, we do face many challenges, many more than this pandemic, COVID-19. We need scientists to underpin the decisions that our politicians have to take. And also that we have seen very clearly in the during the pandemic, that if your decisions are not sustained by or documented by good analysis, by scientists, by reliable information, then it will not be carried by the population, and it makes it more difficult to implement or to have it accepted. At the same time, there's a high burden on the scientists to deliver on these high expectations, because we cannot, scientists, researchers, innovators, find a solution to everything. We are precisely researchers because we still have so many more questions. Curiosity driven, that is what drives the ones that are engaged in research and innovation. And that spirit we should keep up. So first of all, it's very important to be interested in science, doing research. It helps so much to understand the society today. Secondly, make sure that you do engage in research in an integral way. Integrity becomes very important, precisely because we have such a responsibility to deliver on results for the well-being and for our societies. Somebody from your organization? Hello? Yes? Yeah, I'm busy now. 5 o'clock. I'm sorry, I thought it was against, but still, so we have a high responsibility, and scientists, it's not the time to disappoint, because we also need to speak and act with one voice towards our governments, because the government's decision makers depend on scientists to have scientifically based decisions. It also means that they have to invest more in research, and that is also important. Now we come to what is your most the topic of your first of all organization and awareness event is we do research not always for the sake of it. As I mentioned, we do it to have scientifically based decisions, uh, to help finding solutions, also to create economic growth. That is becoming an increasingly important dimension and role of research and innovation. It's the growth creation. It's not only it's because we will find new products, new services, new processes, and that's where IPR becomes extremely important. So what happens too often is that you, students, startups, even sometimes small, medium-sized entrepreneurs, you are so enthusiastic about what you have in mind as an idea, what you have developed, that you forget to think about how much intellectual property have I put into that, and isn't it time to protect it before somebody runs away with your idea and it might be too late. So my advice is that the first step in IPR is awareness raising, and that is what you're doing, and that is what is so positive, is you, because we are committed, we are engaged, we are having ideas, and we speak to other people, and suddenly it's an idea that becomes a product, a service, a technology. Somebody else uses it, and I say, oh my god, if I had been smarter, I would have been the rich one, or the richer, or the one that could claim it's my invention. So be aware of that. And that is also the way in which we do conduct and organize the research at European level. I am, of course, Angela introduced me, and as Science Council here in New Delhi, I'm looking at the possibilities of cooperation between Europe and India. We, at European level, we have put a program together where all the member states put money in the same pot, and then we decide on which topics to do it, because we want to create critical mass. And we also believe that doing research at where there is a critical mass and a larger number of participants will be creating more effect and leverage, because there's more meeting of the there is more possibility of exchanging knowledge, and to exchange of knowledge to create scientific capacity or innovate. So per definition, if we organize research and innovation at European level, it will always be between more than 2 or 3 entities. You may have consortia, collaboration projects of 12, 13, 14 entities, research institutes, universities, individual scientists, startups, SMEs. We do encourage a lot participation of SMEs of different countries in Europe, and also possibility of different countries in the world. All have a different set mindset, all have a different culture, all have a different agenda. But we leave the freedom to the scientists and the members of the consortium to agree on what they can do together to come up with solutions for which they will get public funding. And the first thing we say to them is make sure that if you have already an idea which is further developed, or if you have background information, forehand information, that you share this with your consortium members, and that you make it clear that what is your portion in the research that you will bring in. Do you have already intellectual property rights on that part? Because we are a lot now in the deployment of solutions. So you will meet together to find a solution. We're very much solution oriented. We need solutions for these global problems. So be open, transparent, upfront. Say, I have, that is my knowledge, that is my ID, that is my product. It is maybe mature to have it licensed, it's maybe mature to take a patent, and then you also agree beforehand, preferably if, because we are together here finding a solution, what will be my share in the patent? Because you may have people who say, yeah, you had that product, but I found the comma or the device to make it operational, and I will take all the rights and the property. That needs to be discussed. Be aware of the potential of intellectual property, be transparent, be honest, and set it all in an arrangement among all the participants in a consortia with your partners. Whether it's research or whether as SMEs and startups, you form also consortia, not necessarily to further research on it, but to further develop. So awareness, transparent, set up front, and then at the end of the further development, you may come up with a new product where you say, ho, now it's time for me to protect that. And then, of course, it's good that you already know some intellectual property rights specialists that can guide you, that can follow you to say it's worth investing. Taking an intellectual, taking a patent is costly and time consuming. So it's again another reflection that you have to make. Will I do it? What are the pros? What are the cons? Also, you have to do a whole search on whether nobody else had already a patent, how long time it will take. That you need to find out if it's in India, if it's an international patent, if it's in the US, if you further license it. So I mentioned to Sunil that I'm not an IPR specialist, but I have experience as a research policy person to say it is so important. It is so important that you create awareness, that you as potential applicants or owners already of a patent are aware of that, and that you negotiate upfront the conditions, that you are aware, that you have a trustworthy advice to, and also anticipate the timing of that. So those are my main messages. Now, I can also say that we are, it is impossible for people from an administration, a public authority like the European Commission I represent here, to tell to Dr. Rupesh Vazani, to Jatin Jani, whatever, they have something and they come to me, I have a good idea, should I patent it? That's not our role. That is a too technical material for that. But we have, and we hope to have by sometimes in November, we will launch what we call an IPR help desk. And it will, because we also recommend our European partners, and I don't know if I'm taking too much time. Can you hear
Tanya?
me?
No, Tanya,
Yeah.
you go ahead. This is Jatin. You can go ahead. You are still having time. Don't worry.
Fine. So we will an IPR desk because we do recommend to all European entrepreneurs, startups who are looking at possibilities of cooperation, business opportunities in India to be aware of the IPR implications, and also make sure that we have a network of specialists at hand that could help them advise whether or not and what are the formalities or the procedure to take a patent. There's a whole business analysis to be made. Shall I take my patent in India? Shall I take it? Um, I, I had a presentation during COVID-19 of a very a good Indian scientist, and she was developing some treatment for COVID-19 based on herbals, and she had taken a patent on that in the US. Compared to taking it in India. So she had also made a whole reasoning. I asked her, why are you doing that in the US and not in India? Well, she found it easier to do it in the US, and she also thought that by taking it in the US, she will have access to a more mature and faster market. And so that's again a policy decision that you have to take. So first of all, awareness. Be very much aware. Don't work in your corner and think that you have an idea and nobody else has an idea. If you work with partners, be transparent. Integrity is the longest lasting value in our domain, and then be assisted on by technical experts, by IPR, because that's complex. It's part of a business model. It's part of it's an investment. So that's why several people don't take it. There's also a whole, but it's time consuming and costly, but the return of investment could be there if you want to sell your product later, or your company with a patent that will increase the value of your company. And we have certainly done that for European stakeholders through creating this IPR desk that we will soon launch for the Europeans in India. And that brings me to the third dimension of my intervention, if I have still 5 minutes. That is, I am not only here to look at Indian participants. My main interest is, of course, especially as research and innovation becomes in a way so much linked to economic growth, is to see how European stakeholders, startups can develop and co-produce with Indians. And for that purpose, we have created a network of Indian and European incubators. We have about 50 Europeans and 50 Indian incubators. Of course, within the incubators, we have the startups. Some are more mature than others. And again, one of the points that we always do is if we bring, and so what we do is matchmaking. We learn about the activities of the European incubators, their interest and capacity to look at India, Indians that have either interested to learn because we have already in many areas some technological edge, let's put it this way, but that the edge is not sufficient. Europe needs India to deploy its products in India, because our experience is that it always has to be made adaptable and affordable. So the European product, ID, service, process, especially processes in energy, for example, resistance, capacity, will not be the same in Europe as in India, might require intervention of startups. You do something jointly, and again, there will be this reasoning that is necessary. Has that product changed so much that thanks to my intervention, it is a new product ready for the Indian market? And should I now think about myself taking a patent of that new product? And so that is also something that we look at about stimulating this co-creation and co-development. And an integral part of that is, of course, then also to make sure all the time we say, best of luck. It's not a public administration that should intervene to say which co-creation, which co-development, and how you will do that. But please don't come and cry in our lap later. Be aware, IPR, IPR, IPR. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to make some promotion also of the EU activities to encourage cooperation with Europe and India in the innovation ecosystem with startups. Thank you also that I can add my voice to this importance to be aware on IPR. And unfortunately, as I mentioned to Sunil, I cannot advise on which and what IPR that you need specialists for. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and talk to us and and boost us in terms of what we are already doing, and we hope that we are able to, uh, do the best that we can in terms of creating awareness on intellectual property as well. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a great pleasure to have you. I'm just, I would next call upon our next speaker for the day, Mr. Yagnesh Sangarajka. Uh, so that can we have Mr. Yagnesh?
Hi, Angela.
Hello, sir. We're not able to see you, I think. All right. Great. Good afternoon. All right. So Mr. Yagnesh is a chartered accountant. He has had a long and successful career in the corporate world, having led finance, M&A strategy, and investment relations for various organizations, large and medium-sized, listed and unlisted. Mr. Yagnesh has worked for the Hinduja Group, their ITES BIS, now known as Hinduja Global Solutions, Entertainment, World Developers Private Limited, part of Atul Goya, by the brand name Mahesh Tutorials, and M&T Educare by the name of Mahesh Tutorials, a listed education service player, now part of SL Group. Mr. Yagnesh currently is the founder and CFO of 100x.vc, the India's first venture capital fund, which uses iSafe notes to fund startups. 100x.vc is promoted by Mehta Ventures, a family office owned by Ace Angel investor Sanjay Mehta. And 100x.ps has already funded about 20 companies since 2019. Thank you, Yagnesh Bhai, for joining in. And just before you, we've had Ms. Tanya speak about the European delegation and the activities and very important notes. And with your experience, I'm sure the audience will be able to connect with the topics like the investments and the funds, which will be really helpful for them. So I request you to please take on and go ahead. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Angela, for the kind introduction. Hi, good afternoon, guys. You know, just like Angela introduced, I'm currently founder at XVC. We closely work with the startup ecosystem. We contribute by way of uh, creating awareness with founders. We work very closely with startup founders at an early stage, and very. I mean, the current Indian ecosystem currently has a pain point in terms of funding early stage startups. So you must be reading across a lot of news that this company got funded, that company got funded, large names, bigger valuations. All that typically happens much later, in the life of a startup. The initial years are pretty hard, as one would imagine, and we try to make that journey easy for founders. Uh, and I would like to kind of get obviously share my views and experiences of working with startups. So pardon me if there's more color on startups in my presentation, and I understand the importance of IP. I've closely kind of associated worked with IPViz, who works on valuations, commercialization of IP. So fortunate to have that experience also. So yes, I'll try to kind of connect the dots between IP and entrepreneurship, which are absolutely interwoven, as everyone would know. But there is much more to it in terms of the early stage startup ecosystem. So I'll try to kind of do that. And am I able to share my screen, Anjula? Can I present?
Yes, sir. Surat, can you please give him the rights to share?
Yeah, is my screen visible, guys?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Jatin bhai. Thanks. Basically wanted to just kind of like I have two parts to my presentation, and one is on the startup macro trends. I'm sure everyone would be interested to know what's happening in the current ecosystem. How are we looking at startups? And then, what's the role of IP in startups and entrepreneurship? So I'll kind of carry on this. So, we had basically, the first wave of startups where, it kind of started about 10 years back. And yeah, now it's visible to me. Yeah. So, there's a report on KPMG last year that came out where, the number of startups grew something like 7x to 50,000 startups in a decade. So this whole decade is now called as the, first wave, where a lot of development started in 2010-11. A lot of companies, started with their businesses, much like what happened probably 30, 40 years back in the US. So, I mean, and then it rapidly grew amongst all the ups and downs. The startup ecosystem, kind of continued to grow. And, you can see the output here today. It grew like 7x in one decade, whereas in the last 3 decades, it probably just grew 2x or 3x. So such a fast growth has happened. I mean, India has witnessed an explosion of the startup ecosystem. You've seen a lot of, some of the exits also. For example, the whole Walmart Flipkart deal that, validated India's attractiveness because, India has been always touted as, a growing economy, a developing economy. But, it becomes true when investors are able to exit and, make their significant returns and the whole wealth Uh, and I think a lot of corporates now, joining hands and basically accelerating investments in startups. So we have seen the new rise of corporate venture arms and family offices suddenly taking a lot of interest in startups. So we, when we talk to these corporates, when we talk to these family offices, they are very keen to kind of do a lot of strategic investments, something that can add value to their business and enhance their shareholder wealth creation. And you will be surprised to know that Indian startups recent years have raised more money than the IPOs. So that's been a trend, and that's something that has never happened in the Indian capital markets system. So you can see the importance that the Indian startups are now getting. So homegrown startups like Ola, Oyo, these have become worldwide names. Freshworks, Grey Orange, these are all companies which are now pan world. First they were pan India. So I mean that's the journey. So some facts, and estimates like you guys have seen about the rise of unicorns. The $1 billion valuation club that is called unicorns. Last year we saw 2019. We saw the number 7 unicorns getting added to the whole list of unicorns in India, and that took the tally to 24 by end of 2019, which is a good number considering we hardly had unicorns in the early 2011-12 period. Then came the pandemic, and we all experienced that. Despite the pandemic, you would be surprised to know that India already produced 4 unicorns this year: Postman, Nykaa, Unacademy, and Razorpay. And we still have 3 months to go, and we expect deals to happen that can take this number to 8. So, despite the whole setback for 6 months, you are looking at probably the same number of unicorns as there were last year addition. So, and that made India the third largest kind of startup ecosystem in the world. We have over 30,000 as per government data registered startups who are DIPP registered startups who are eligible for various benefits, including a lot of IP benefits, which I will come to in my later slides. And then there is a recent study that just came 2 days back. Thai Delhi along with Zin, a study where India is now expected to have almost double the number of startups, like 60,000 startups, and as compared to 24, about 100 unicorns by 2025. Despite the setback caused by the pandemic. So that's a huge number. That's something that shows how bullish the whole world is towards Indian startups. We've recently seen a lot of capital that has come from Chinese and Japanese investors as well. You must have seen some deals announced, and Alibaba has been a huge investor. They've invested in various companies, and you can see a lot of these kind of deals happening. So I mean, despite that, I mean, there has been a couple of challenges with startups, and these are, these will go away with time. But then, startups need to be, very aware about these couple of challenges. Talent management being one, and then driving high growth are identified as two top challenges for startups. So, we are, where are we seeing this unicorns build up, right? So, which areas are these unicorns going to be coming from? So, we did a study, and we basically feel, apart from various industries, we believe that and the whole digital inclusion, which comprises of voice, video, and vernacular, you can see it all around you, and are becoming part of day-to-day lives with deep internet penetration. Uh, so, few areas that we are seeing here grow are fintech, e-commerce, and marketplace, internet software and services, healthcare. This is a huge place. Also, edutech, which is not mentioned here, but I'm just mentioning this is part of, probably another, huge vertical growing. And then obviously AI, robotics, and business intelligence. These are areas which basically are seeing emergence of startups, a lot of innovation, a lot of new kind of business marketplaces opening up for these particular verticals. So this is the areas where we are seeing, emergence of unicorns. Um, and now, the second wave is what I said, right? The first wave was 2010 to 19. Now is the second wave where we are seeing a lot of catalysts of startup ecosystem adding to the whole investment universe. So angel investors, family offices, VC investors, they've all come to realize that slowly becoming the innovation hub of the world, and we are seeing uh, more and more participation in startups, and you would be surprised to know that investments from angels and family offices have actually surpassed the VC money, so venture capital funds as we call it in short. um, so they have surpassed VC money and became the financiers of early stage capital. So very early stage we are seeing angel investors, which are high net worth individuals, uh, having a lot of domain expertise, a lot of experience in building products, come forward and support these early stage founders. Uh, so that's what we've been seeing pretty much happening around us. And so macro kind of trends that we are expecting here is that over long term, uh, unlisted startup companies in India will basically outperform listed companies. And I'll give you an example in my next slide. uh, Many high quality startups now want to continue remain private for longer, because of obvious reasons, is because they are now attracting capital without having to go listed, and there is enough capital available from VC funds, from multinational institutions, for their growth and expansion. So capital is no longer now considered to be a constraint for good quality startups. Of course, uh, it is an illiquid asset. There are high returns in startups. You obviously can't sell, your stake in a startup so easily. So those things will continue to be there while the industry develops. More registered investment funds. So SEBI, as you know, has categorized alternative investment funds as another investing category through a fund. So more and more Cat 1, which is basically Cat 1 fund, is a fund which invests purely in startups. So those kind of funds registrations are on the rise. We also at 100x are registered as a Cat 1 AIF. And of course, we've seen recently regulatory environment turning more and more investor friendly and founder friendly. So we've seen spate of amendments, may it be tax, may it be on the patenting side. The regulatory environment is turning more and more friendly, and that's the reason why you see more and more startups coming up. So these are all kind of these are all environmental changes for a very speedy growth in the startup ecosystem. So if India has to become a $5 trillion economy by 24-25, and if startups are given the right push by the government and the investing community, this is very much possible. Let's say we could be anywhere between 2 to 2.25 kind of trillion economy, and we are talking about a 5 trillion just in next 3 to 4 years. So this is very and the role of incubators, accelerators, corporate VCs. They have a very significant role to play in this initiative. So you know. You know, IP now, as an enabler to entrepreneurs in this knowledge-based economy. So we all know, right, that we are now in a knowledge-based economy rather than a very hard asset economy. And there are some anecdotes and facts that I will share with you. This is where, and I'm sure you must have heard in earlier sessions, IP protection and commercialization is key. So basically, talking about various types of IP, right? I won't get into too much detail because I'm sure there's enough knowledge around the house on that. So copyrights, trademarks, which is basically the large brands getting created, and we'll come to that. Patent, must for pharma companies, process patents, product patents. Technological know-how began, like 20 years back, and now software is ruling everything. So, those are important IPs, trade secrets, designs, and geographical indication. This is a slide that I want to kind of spend 2 minutes on, and this will probably highlight the importance of IP rights, IP value in a business. So large brands, as you know, have created enormous wealth, right? This is something that is known, but I'm a numbers guy, so pardon me for sharing some numbers which probably may interest you. So for S&P 500 companies, which is in the US in 2018. Tangibles like real estate and equipment comprised just 16% of the company value, whereas this was something like 70% back in the 80s and 90s. In 2018, the S&P 500 just had 16% component coming from real estate, hard assets, equipment, its reputation, comprised 84%, which was $1 trillion. So you can see the importance of IP rights. You can see the importance of intangibles in commercialization of a company's value, of in enhancing company's value. So nothing more can highlight this, but this data, right? Apple today, valued at almost 2 trillion, uh, is almost equal to like okay India's stock market capitalization, right? So one company equivalent to 5,000 companies, large, big, medium, small in India. The market cap has kind of doubled in 2 years, and we all know it's a high intellectual property company. Amazon, for its own unique offering, again doubled in 1 year. Jeff Bezos has multiplied his wealth pretty much in 1 year, valued at 1.5 trillion dollars. Our own, at back in home in India, TCS, which is one of the most highly valued IT firm, valued at 150 billion dollars, which is 10 lakh 50,000 crores, whereas its revenue last year probably is 1 lakh 50,000 crores. So even if roughly in financial terms, multiple of 3 to 4 for such a high evolved IT company, it would probably come to half the value. So where is half the value coming from? The rest of the half of the value of TCS is coming from its brand. It's coming from the trust that is created by TCS in the minds of its shareholders, B its customers, and all the stakeholders, internal as well as external. So this is the reason why companies like TCS is valued so high. Another example, we all know, right? Beju's, which is the world's most highly valued at tech. Surprisingly, the ascent of Beju's is phenomenal. They reported probably revenues of 400 million approximately in 1920. And recently, with a deal, they were valued at $11 billion, again, doubled in a year. So you can see the multiplier of the revenue, right? It is something like 25 to 30 times of revenue. Whereas good companies, you can see TCS above, right? It's 7 times revenue, uh, and it's 30-year-old IT behemoth. Whereas Beju's is, just kind of risen in the last 5 to 6 years, and they are valued at 25, 30 times of revenue. So, why is this happening? This is happening because there is an implicit brand value that Beju has, kind of created uh, for its shareholders, for its stakeholders, customers, employees, and others. Again, Udaan is another example of a unicorn in India online e-commerce marketplace. The youngest unicorn, by the way, 3 years old or 4 years old company, valued at almost $2.5 billion in August 2019, and probably now double of that today. So, you can see just with these examples, large companies can attribute more than 60 to 70% of their market value, to their brand value and intangibles. So that's the whole point of things. So, needless to say, IP is very crucial for startups. When a startup kind of, patents its ideas or protects its unique offer, unique selling proposition by way of a patent or a trademark, its valuation increases, because it's likely to attract more investors. Investors are likely to startup and financial investors uh, of a startup whose intellectual properties are protected. If it's not protected, then it gives you a significant discount to your valuation, and that is a point worth noting. And I've given you already some numbers in terms of why that brand value, why that thing is so highly valued in the minds of investors. So very early on, startups should focus on creating IP, creating something unique, which they can register legally, so that tomorrow when you do a fundraise, tomorrow when you basically are talking to a strategic acquirer or an investor, these things kind of come across and help you in terms of your valuation. So thanks to IPR, uh, other companies are incentivized to kind of develop new and better technologies to increase their revenue and enhance shareholder wealth. uh, so how to create an IP strategy, just pointers here. uh, and first is your company's size. You should be able to know what your size is, what can you take on, how much can you create, how much can you improvise on your existing product, IP, whatever that is. Establish guidelines for creating an intellectual property. Now this will require some hard work. It's not so easy for you to kind of feel, you might feel that you have something unique, but if you look around, there might be 10 other people who are doing the same thing. So you need to figure out how are you different, create that unique competitive advantage, create barriers to entry. That is the single most important thing for startups. Analyze third party interactions, understand what your customers are telling you, whether they are finding something unique offering in your product, in your platform, and that's how they are able to buy your product. That's how they will be convinced to buy your product. um, Audit your intellectual property, register it, protect it, audit it. That's the most important thing to create a strategy. And then there is obviously an IP risk management. This is in any IP commercialization, risk should be managed, and that is basically specific IP risks which are specific to the commercialization activities are typically related to the do you confidential agreements, non-disclosure agreements. You need to have that in place to be able to protect your valuation, your IP, your product from being misused elsewhere. Nature of your product and service, financial matters, how are you commercializing, how are you generating revenues from that, how are you monetizing the IP, legal issues, obviously around protection, trying to prevent anybody from using your IP, enforcing it legally. It's a lot of work and sometimes high cost too, but then that is important to kind of defend your IP, defend your value that you've worked hard to create in your company. And then the business reputation. These are certain things that you need to look at. There's obviously a long kind of checklist in terms of, as I said, signing a non-disclosure. If you are the assignee of the IP, you need to perform a thorough diligence whether that IP really is the ownership of the assigner. So whoever is kind of assigning you the IP, you need to have a title kind of very clearly, like the way you do it for all the real estate searches. This is something similar that you do on a patent or a trademark or a registered design. It's always best practice to kind of use an IP professional. They are the ones who know where to search, how to look, how to see that whether the title is clear and you're able to utilize the IP effectively after getting it assigned. Perform valuations of IP, so that there is a fair payment on the assignment. Identify the IP. There is an agreement that you will have to draw, which will clearly mention in writing what all are the rights you are taking from the IP. There may be partial rights, there may be licensing rights, there may be franchisee rights, uh, and obviously there has to be a legal review of these things. So this is just a small checklist of things that you need to probably carry out. Um, most forms of IP commercialization, just want to kind of spend 1 minute on this. And obviously transfer of IP, which is transfer of title, assignment, development of internal software is where you kind of when most companies do that, most IT companies, most tech companies develop something internally which is value, which is of great value, and that's how they're able to generate revenues and shareholder value. Licensing arrangements, you could have arrangements with the owner, part licensing with a period, time period to it. uh, Whereas the IP ownership remains with the owner, you are allowed to kind of use particular period, particular geography, or anything of that sort. Franchising, where they could have royalty arrangements for using the IP, and probably a revenue share as well with the owner. That is important. And then obviously joint ventures, spin-offs, collaborative arrangements where joint IPs are created. So example like Google and NASA creating something like Google Earth, they will obviously have joint ownership of IP, and these are typically done through SPVs, special purpose vehicles, and the IP is ownership of the company. So that's typically the type of commercializations we see. Uh, I would like to kind of just spend few minutes on what kind of benefits today are available for startups who are creating IP or who are in the search to create IP, who are in the effort to create IP. So DIPP is a registered government entity which regulates kind of or probably registered startups, gives benefits to startups. So there is fast tracking of startup patent applications, right? So unlike any other company, if a startup is applying for a patent, there is a fast track window that is provided. And very importantly, to note startups are eligible for an 80% rebate in patent filing fees and a 50% rebate in trademark filing fees. You would be surprised to know that already 8,000 startups have kind of taken this benefit, and this is a data coming from government. So these are benefits for companies, for startups who are planning to file patents. This is a useful way of reducing your cost, taking the benefits that are available. And then there are tax benefits, as most of you would know. 3 years of profits out of the initial 10 years post startup formation are exempt from tax. Recently, the whole angel tax kind of draconian clauses were removed, and government has now become, obviously, as I was earlier saying, founder and investor friendly. There are tax exemptions on investment in startups above fair market value, which are the benefit, with huge benefit given to investors and the company. And then obviously various SEBI relaxations to angel funds for investing in startups. So we of relaxation for investing in startups is pass-through entity. So no taxes are paid by the angel fund for investing in startups. So these are some of the immense benefits that are going to propel, the growth of startups. So that's something that, and just on a closing note, there are some key challenges, obviously, that we see, and we all will have to kind of face it and uh, come over it. There is obviously low awareness of IP in the minds of Indian entrepreneurs. So this will take time, and I see a lot of efforts and initiatives. One such like IPPO is involved into. So there is a lot of creation of awareness that is happening, but a lot needs to be done still. Despite robust IP laws, we sometimes see lack of effective enforcement, and least priority are given to IP related matters, and there is a dire need to bring at par IP matters as compared to other economic offenses. So unless this is done, the whole awareness will not take place, and there's obviously a high cost of enforcing IP rights. So I think those are the challenges that we'll have to keep in mind. And just to summarize, guys, value, protect, and exploit. These are three important things. First, you need to value, understand what is the value of your IP, protect it so that the value remains with the company and not, slips through outside, or a leakage, a revenue leakage, or a value leakage happens. And then obviously to kind of exploit that to enhance your shareholder value creation, founder creation, create enough wealth by exploiting your IP to create, a sustainable competitive advantage. So, these are the things that I wanted to talk about, and you can always email me for your feedback, queries, and I thank again, IPPO team, Angela, Jatin, everyone, for giving me this opportunity to kind of, share my views here and take you through this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yagnesh bhai. It was well. Am I audible? Is it echoing?
Yeah, we can hear you, Angela. One second.
So on the screen below, you might find stop sharing.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find that.
Sumit, can we help you? Sumit, can we help Yagnesh bhai? In terms
Yeah,
of
I think I found the button. So yeah, I've stopped sharing my screen. Thank you guys again, and for patiently listening to me. And thanks, Angela.
Thank you so much, Yagnesh bhai. It was a real pleasure to have you as well. So if I may now have Tanya ma'am also coming in, so maybe if the audience has any questions, I'm sorry, our the audience. If you have any questions, you can please unmute yourself and raise your question. Sudhir, can we just have Tanya ma'am if she's around?
Hi, Tanya. This is Yagnesh.
Well, breaking the ice, but no question. I would like to say that this was a fantastic presentation. It really
Thanks.
gave a good overview of the ecosystem, which is important because it shows the volume um, of what there is upcoming, and that's also how we see it. Everybody is looking at India as the emerging market, and suddenly for innovation, and we all want to tap into that.
That's right.
But I think it's okay because maybe India sees that a bit differently. Or my Indian interlocutors at government level. But I am born and raised with research and innovation policy, and well, no, that's not true. I was more in the trade field, but then the research and why we do research, and it's a very nice domain because it's so broad, and also because it is first hurdle is not the competition. It is really, again, coming back to what I said in the beginning, never has science and research so been important. Also, what is important is international cooperation and uh, and coordination, and that is maybe what I hope that India will realize a bit more, because you have a huge market, and uh, and very entrepreneurial, and of course, if we say, and if I say we want to tap into that, it's not charity, we see business, but the business will not come by Europe alone. I firmly believe that Europe, or US or others, but I'm not their spokesperson, will only make it in India in working together with Indians. So cooperation, making it, what I said in the beginning, adaptable and affordable. And it's not a European mindset that will do that. I have seen some Europeans that say, I have a fantastic technology. Whoops, Indian market. I said, forget about it. It's not deployable like that. Fair
Yeah.
enough. And it was a huge, a well-reputed research institute. And they had a smart grid storage that had a resistance to 38 degrees. But I said,
Mm.
India is 40, 45. Make it
Yeah.
adaptable. There
Adaptable.
is, yeah, there is much more dust in India. Solar panels will have to have a way to resist to that than we have in other countries. That's only small examples. And then, of course, your expensive products that we have in Europe, we're not going to sell them I mean, the villages can't have it. We want an inclusive approach. So therefore, the awareness raising of IPR is even more important, where you will have to work together to also for yourself to become more competitive. We have complementary knowledge, and of course, I don't know. I hope I'm sure you agree with me. In Europe, we have already that tradition of protecting our know-how and more that. So Europeans that come here, they will immediately say, oh, my fantastic product, intellectual property rights and all that. And they maybe not be so integral as I said that you should be. So this is another good advice, awareness, and also the other advice which I outlined and which was illustrated without prior coordination with Janesh is be assisted at a technical level. It's a complex matter. Study it, analysis. The pros and cons. There are variations of what should I protect and all that. So the ecosystem is there, the potential is there. Look at it also for international, and then the dimension of IPR becomes even more important because the Europeans that you would work with would have this background information, so they may kind of and being experienced in negotiating IPR, you may be a bit lost. So another reason why you have to advise you. And it also reiterates the fact that it is a technical matter, but it is important. So no questions, but just relating my experience to
Thanks
yours.
for your
And
thanks for your
and,
inputs.
and
Yeah, thanks for your view. And here, so we've funded some companies and they are in deep tech. We've never heard of these kind of businesses before, but they are
yeah,
all coming up new and innovative ways of kind of solving day-to-day problems. I think that's what has started in India as a movement, and we see that probably happening more. We are more closer to the ecosystem, so we are able to see that happen. While the whole success rate of startups is very low, but I feel that that success rate will improve with times to come as companies get more and more funding. They get more support from corporates, large institutions, government. That will improvise the success rate just like any other country, right? I mean, so we are behind, but we are catching up real fast.
yeah, sure. No. I mean, that's another thing. But eventually, I heard you say, funding. Of course, it's always a question of funding. And what can a government fund? I think it's minimal in the innovation sector, in the startups. It's facilitating matchmaking, it's platforms, it's awareness raising, it's all these words that I had to learn that was not part of my jargon like 3 or 4 years ago. It's the scouting, it's
Yeah.
the business plan. That I think the government, it's worth for them to invest in creating such platforms. But
Yes.
eventually, uh, but I find there is already such a culture in India that you have
Yes.
companies that do look at what startups can bring.
Yes. So apart from the companies, even the Institute of Science and Technology in India are now providing reasonable, sizable grants, and subsidies to startups, which is by way of funding, straight funding into the company's bank account, and that's what is more necessary for startups. Well, most of these are cash strapped, bootstrapped, and they need funds to spend even to reach a particular stage of their product. So we are seeing grants being given to more and more startups, and that's a very healthy sign. I would say. I mean, we're very happy to note that.
Yeah. But eventually, in innovation, and I think that's also a message that we have to share with the entrepreneurs and the startups, and certainly the students that are listening to us. It's not always to listen to us or with the idea is there funding. Awareness and is a first step, knowing what you have to look for and all that. Eventually, yes, some support to take your IPR because otherwise you wouldn't do it and you may lose the business opportunity can be appropriate. But in the innovation section, where I said in the beginning, research science is a nice area because it's not too competitive. I mean, there's a lot of bottom up that you can do together, but then at a certain time, each goes its way. Then, of course, it needs to be sustainable. And that is only the market that can decide that, and the investors and the startups themselves. So that is also something that startups don't always understand. That's normal. They always think that what they have invented is the invention. And that is also why reaching out internationally is so good, because then you will see that there is a lot of meeting of the minds and that your ideas have already also we can touch, compare, and all that. But I was not supposed to speak again that long, but I wanted to match a bit our interventions and the benefit I hope for the audience. Because I believe there will be very few questions because it was so crystal clear what Janesh said.
Well, happy to answer any. Angela, are there any questions?
Yeah. So audience, do you really have any questions? Because I think the discussions that these two had was like making it really, as ma'am said, very clear in terms of, and of course, the various perspectives that have come up from ma'am's talk and Ganesh your talk in two different perspectives, international and in terms of, the funding and IP and the startup related opportunities. So with that, I would like to thank and just brief you about a couple of things that we've done over the last 2 days. This is the fourth edition of the IPFest, and we've had various speakers coming on board for over the last 3 years. And we would really like to thank all the speakers that have been with us for day one and day two. Well, we had our chief guest, Mr. Harish Mehta, yesterday beginning the session, the founder and chairman of Onward Technologies, founder member and past chairman NASCOM. He introduced the IP Fest, and then we had Mr. Maulik Ansari talk about on IP and technology in digital era. Then we had Ms. Chitra Iyer. She is the director and licensing program leader who spoke about activities with Philips and the other talks. We have Ms. Lisa Macklin from King's University College, the Western University, Ontario. Then we have Mr. Deepak Desai, the Executive Director and Partner from IBM Analytics, yesterday. So we had a very insightful talk on intellectual property and technology and digital era. Today we have for IP and entrepreneurs and startups, we have Ms. Tanya and Mr. Yatnesh Kandarajka. Thank you so much for being with us for 2 days and enlightening our participants on the various talks that we could have them delivered in terms of intellectual property. We also would like to thank our various partners who've been with us. Sumit, will have the next slide, please. Without whom we would not have been, it wouldn't have been possible for IPPO to kind of come up with a program in a virtual form as well. So great thanks to the DSG and Good Host. Great thanks to the PDPU for partnering with us. Associate partners is KC Consultancy, peer partners Simulations, tech partners NIASA, the support partners Thai and Dubai, the Asia IT Association, GIS, Gujarat Innovation Society, GCCI, GNLU, Myanmar University, and United World. So thank you so much for participating with us, and we hope we are able to do justice in terms of doing a lot of more activities in terms of IP awareness. And we also are going to have this every year. And in this pandemic, we were able to deliver through a virtual forum. We also have the speakers who have been kind enough to accept our request and have joined us from all forums. Thank you so much for being here. So we welcome everybody, and we would like to place a note of thanks for being a pleasant listener on all the forums that we have been able to gather together and bring forward to you. Thank you so much, Tanya, for being with us. Thank you, Yatnesh Bhai. And thank you all the participants. We will be ending the session in a minute or two. And we hope to see you next year.
Thanks, Angela. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Yatnesh Bhai.
Thank you very much, Angela. Very well organized. Very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.